and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off the chip.
Hitting with a baton a man while other officers hold that man down.
Change we can believe in. I didn't say change we can believe in tomorrow.
Есть серьезное основание полагать.
Аллаху Акбар! Аллаху Акбар! Аллаху Акбар!
We saw these individuals buy or begin turning up at crime scenes in the United States and in Mexico, and yet we still did nothing.
So why was he inaccurate? Why can't we keep our health care plans if we like them?
If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
Hi there, and welcome once again to the Fire Report. I'm your host, Dwayne Risco. You know, folks, since 1998, I've been on a crusade to expose some things that's been going on in our skies, and you've heard me talk about it before. Many of you laugh and mock, and many of you just don't get it. Either the reason you don't get it is you're ignorant, or you don't want to know the truth, or you're one of them and you're a liar. And tonight's show is Chemtrails. I got 3 videos. I'm only going to talk for a few moments because I want these videos to do the talking. You know, since 1998, when I first got involved in this, only my mother, Janet Risco, and my sister, Donna Coyle, and my family believed me. Like the most folks out there in the audience, they laughed and ridiculed me. My boss laughed and mocked. The guys I've worked with and doing floorings for 20-something years, they all laughed and mocked. They used to stand around and make fun out of me and laugh, just like our local media does, just like our meteorologists all talk about the beautiful contrails forming these beautiful water vapors. Well, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, after getting the holy grail of information videos that I'm about to show you, I call them all liars. They're paid to lie to you, otherwise they're not going to be on TV. They're paid to lie to you, otherwise they're not going to get their positions in government. Folks, geoengineering is what's going on. And I don't know for the life of me how all of you can get in your vehicles every day, drive up and down the road, and not notice these jets making X's after X's after X's. I don't know for the life of me how you can sit outside in your backyard, your front porch, look up and see all this covered sky turning into a silk white blanket and not notice it and believe that it's weather that just rolled in from the south or from the upper jet streams. How do you people not see this stuff? After watching these 3 videos that you're about to see, if you don't get it once and for all, perhaps somebody's been giving you flu shots with things in it that just affects your brain to have any reasoning. Perhaps you are part of the nanorobotic technology that's been put into your brains that you cannot see this stuff. If you tell a lie enough over and over and over, people believe it. Folks, geoengineering, aerosol spraying, dumping tons and tons and tons and tons of aluminum on us daily, during the night, during the day, into our water, into our soil, onto our plants. You're going to see a video about pilots, doctors, and scientists giving reports in Santa Clara, California County, where they held a 3-hour meeting. Not neighbors, not guys like Dwayne Risco and friends. You're going to see pilots, doctors, scientists, geophysics getting up there with reports explaining how Alzheimer's, nanorobotic, when these things fall from the sky, goes up into your nostrils, into your lobes, causing Alzheimer's, COPD, Do you know what COPD is? Upper respiratory problems. Where's it coming from? I have been on this crusade for years. I have been laughed at, mocked, and ridiculed. But my brother John came around years ago. My friends, I don't want to mention their names here in the community because you'll laugh and ridicule and mock them. But I have wonderful friends who have come around and said, you know what, Dwayne, after watching your videos and after all the reports that you sent out, I see it, man. I'm open to it. After watching the videos with these guys exposing this stuff and showing the chemical tankers and showing this stuff, I get it. Some of you are going to turn around and say, how come there's no proof from our government? Folks, you're dealing with something that's global. You ever hear of DuPont, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, the wealthy of the rich of the richest? Watch these videos. You're going to learn. You're going to see another video, and if I'm not mistaken, it's geoengineering action lawsuit. Also, you're going to see global chemtrails revealed. You're going to see enough of this stuff. It's after you sit there and you watch it and you don't see it. Jesus says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. If you don't get it, there's a few things wrong with you. Either you're with them and you're a far-left Marxist cover-up going along with a global agenda, or you don't want to believe that the government would actually do these things to you, that could actually control where the weather is going to go. You've heard me talk about HAARP, setting electric charges up, bending the stratosphere, sending hurricanes, causing droughts in some areas, floods in another, record snowstorms. I've got it. I'm 100% convinced. Or either that, some of you are just brain dead. You're ignorantly brain dead, or you're a liar, or there's no hope for you. How does this matter? Look at my trees. My trees that's been around before my mom and dad was in Brunswick over 60-something years ago, the big trees are all dying. All across the globe, the tops of the older trees are dying. When they do testing of the soil, the aluminum, the barium is thousands of times of what it's supposed to be. Fish are dying off. Plant lice are dying off. Bushes are dying. The bees are dying. Over 50% of the bees around the world are dying. But they're not spraying us. Why? Your meteorologist will tell you there's no such thing as going on. These are water vapors. Folks, it's called chemtrails. It's aerosol spraying. It's cloud seeding. It's weather modification. It's weather warfare. If you turn around and ask yourself this question, after watching the videos and you see all the aluminum that's being dumped daily, tons after tons after tons, and aluminum causes Alzheimer's, how did Monsanto in California get a patent to grow plants that are resistant to aluminum? Coincidence? Conspiracy theorist? Folks, stick around. Chemtrails. Why don't you see them making artificial line after line after line after line and turning into a haze? Are you blind? Are you dead? Is something wrong? Did they inject you with too many flu vaccines? Were they put nanotechnology to where you laugh and mock and don't believe this stuff? My name is Dwayne Risco. You're watching the Fire Report. They're spraying us, and it's called chemtrails. And the liars on TV, the meteorologists, they're paid to lie. They know I'm here, and they know there's more of me out there that see it. Thanks for watching. It's all about In Search of the Truth. Look up. They're spraying you.
Aircraft making a condensation trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale, you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal. They're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that. Thank you.
I'm here to give you testimony that chemtrails, they're not contrails, are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watch the clouds and watch the spraying program going on. I want to tell you that we're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex, and they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation programs. They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I look around and I see people are starting to look up and see this. Many times I've spoken about chemtrails, and I get this blank look on my face. What are you talking about? I'm saying, look up. As a pilot, before I fly, I look up. And so, boy, they're really out there working.
When you look up at the sun and you see a white haze, that is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese. And there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found. But aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, these previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those. You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1,000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds. It's really interesting, but NASA is a corporation. I want you to know that.
NASA has also conducted a research program in what they call metallized fuels. We're actually putting aluminum oxide right in the fuel because it has 2 atoms of aluminum and 3 atoms of oxygen. So during the combustion process, it releases all that oxygen and dramatically increases efficiency, but it leaves the aluminum in the air.
We got things coming from sky down, and it's a huge, huge problem. Because as it comes down, what happens is a couple of things. Is that it actually is in our air, we breathe it. And as we breathe it, it's actually going to go up through our nostrils, into our brain, easiest access to our brain frontal lobe. The contaminants that have been identified, which already been mentioned, are aluminum. Aluminum is the #1 free radical generator to the brain to cause early apoptosis, which is early death of brain, and it begins to set off the scar tissue, which we call the amygdalin, which is part of the chemical matrix related to Alzheimer's.
I'm a neurologist practicing in Reading for 17 years. And in the past 5 years, I've seen the number of patients with Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative diseases tremendously increased, almost quadruple.
I became interested in chemtrails about 8 years ago when I was in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians are really being very vocal about it. I concur about the increasing number of Alzheimer's. They have been able to take the aluminum and micronize it, which means it'll stay up longer. But it also means, and I don't know if any of you have noticed some metallic taste in your mouth when they're spraying, but you inhale that, it goes up through your cribriform plate and into your through your sinuses and into the brain.
As you heard, to spray nanoparticles, very small particles. These nanoparticles, they basically trigger a programmed cell death in the brain, and that is the ultimate path we see in Alzheimer's.
That's problem number one, because when we look at the Alzheimer issue, we say those are the old. The real problem is, and the real scare I have, is as I am a father of 2, I'm a grandfather of 3. So the drama is our children. ADD started in the 70s. Autism was not on the radar. There was no documents, there was no information. It was 1 in 100,000 children. Today, what we have is 1 in 48 boys. I was part of the early group that was looking for aluminum in ADD and ADHD. And all of those children that started to develop those phenomena had high levels of aluminum. When we figured out protocols to detox them out, to free the body of those particular contaminants, what happened is that their brains came back. When we do this to the age, it doesn't come back as quick, but it will come back. But I'm seeing Alzheimer's in 56 years old. Back in the 70s, Alzheimer's when you were 80.
If you remember 8 to 10 years ago, there was this big move to get rid of aluminum from underarm deodorant because it would cause Alzheimer's. Look what they're doing to us now.
I want to give you a little bit of history on the background behind nanoparticles has been described before. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. It's very small. In fact, if you have particles, say, that are 40 or 50 nanometers across, you can take and line 50 of them up next to a single red blood cell. These things are extremely tiny. They're pervasive.
The collapse and decrease of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
Believe me, I'm seriously concerned with what I'm watching. As a wildlife biologist, I've been watching the ecosystem collapse. When you lose all your stream organisms, when you have aluminum overload in your streams, you're killing your microbial bacteria, and you're disrupting the entire ecosystem. So it goes way beyond just a little bit of pollution. How did Monsanto know to create aluminum-resistant plants? I don't think I've heard anybody ask that question. Okay.
Insects. I've done studies in Siskiyou County. They're at 20% of normal. The aquatic insects basically made a nosedive in 2006 to about 20% of normal. So far this year, I've sampled 200 trout stomachs. 98% of them are empty. So sorry about the trout fishing, fellows. The mayflies, stoneflies, dipterus, and caddisflies are damn near gone. The terrestrial sampling is down to about 20% of normal, except for pest species like ants. We're seeing a loss of the major bird species, and as the gentleman said, the ecosystem is unraveling, and Audubon's been telling you that for years.
The materials that are going into the environment right now, aluminum oxide nanoparticles and barium nanoparticles, these just happen to be the same materials that they use in nanothermate explosives. And so when this stuff settles down out of the air into the environment, it is small enough to be absorbed through the root structure of the trees in the forest. And so when there's a forest fire, and there will be a forest fire, those fires burn dramatically hotter. The point is that the cost of firefighting, the cost in the healthcare system have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. The amount of acreage is lost because of fires. The impact on human health is dramatic.
I personally tested water and aluminum, and I found aluminum had 47 times the normal expected amounts. Strontium had 10 to 20 times the amounts. Barium was 20 times. This is what the stuff looks like here. Collected, most people just think it's a cobweb, but I tested it. It has outrageous amounts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, but they destroy the sample, so I'm not letting this get away from me.
You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years. The rain normal was 5.6. It's 20 times more alkaline. Aluminum blocks essential nutrients. I am unable in my garden to restore normal pH, and that's because nanoparticles are now in the circulatory systems of both plants and humans.
The Air Force conducted a study starting in 1993. It was called In Vitro Toxicity of Aluminum Nanoparticles in Rat alveolar macrophages. That's a real fancy way of saying testing the effect of aluminum nanoparticles on the white blood cells in the little air sacs in your lung, the alveoli. And what they found in this 8-year study was that these particles, when you're exposed to them long enough, it suppresses the ability of your white blood cells to defend you from airborne infections coming into your lungs. So it suppresses your immune system. But they also found that these same particles, once they get into your system, they can actually go through the barrier in each one of the cells. They get inside the cells, and these particles can actually suppress the ability of mitochondria, which are in the cells that help to gobble up toxins and things that would be harmful to the nucleus and the reproduction process of the cells in your body. These processes are suppressed, and so essentially by breathing this material in, your immune system is dramatically suppressed.
I wrote to the federal government because Air Force wrote a book, and on the first page of the book they said, we're going to control the weather by the year 2025. I asked them, what are they doing spraying these chemicals on the public? I said, there's violation of United States Code 50 USC 1520, which prohibits the American government from experimenting on the U.S. citizens with chemical agents. I said that law also requires who's ever experimenting, when the federal government does it, that they have to report to Congress within 30 days. They wrote back, they said they don't know what I'm talking about. We have enough evidence that there's a spraying going all over the place.
We were warned about the takeover of our freedoms by the military-industrial complex by both Eisenhower and Kennedy. They're gaining traction on us, folks. We are in trouble more than just a spraying program.
All I can say is it's about time we get up in arms about this, because it is affecting our health. It's high time that we as citizens of this great country take action.
Board of Supervisors in Suffolk County, New York, they outlawed geochemical engineering. Hawaii passed an ordinance prohibiting geochemical engineering. I urge you to bar geoengineering in Shasta County and pass an ordinance. At least ask some damn questions. What the hell is all this aluminum doing here? Why are the trees dying, fishes dying? Why is there Alzheimer and aluminum spiking? And why are these fibers on the ground here in Shasta County? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon.
Today, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors has been the beneficiary of some sincere, passionate, and knowledgeable comments. And I thank you for those. I am in agreement with my colleagues about sending letters and a call for action, but I would hope that we could go a step further. I would like for us to send a copy of this video where all of you spoke today, all 2.5 or 3 hours of this testimony, to be sent to our senators and our U.S. representatives, and also our representatives in the state of California.
We'll do that.
Let them listen to the passion that came out of this meeting today. Thank you.
You have the motion in front of you. I think it's understood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the response is one that exceeds far the boundaries of Shasta County in terms of the platform that is offered, as evidenced by those who attended today from around the world. That's very impressive.
Could a strange substance found by a southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
And they say the unusual-looking jet trails in the sky are actually chemical-laden chemtrails.
People say the government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail. So what I look up there and I think are contrails, you're telling me are chemtrails?
Yes, that a contrail would be dissipated by now.
And it's interesting, Dale and Christina, this is of interest not just in this country, but European countries and frankly all over the world. A lot of folks interested in it.
Well, Dave, you mentioned that climatologists and others who study the atmosphere believe that they'd be able to surely spot any kind of signs of an ominous plot.
Our journey started in San Diego, California, where thousands of scientists, engineers, policymakers, and journalists gathered for the American Association for the Advancement of Science Conference. One of the topics was the artificial manipulation of the Earth's climate, also called geoengineering. During the meeting, scientists spoke about the plausibility of implementing geoengineering campaigns throughout the world under the guise of preventing global warming. One widely accepted theory was to block the sun by spraying something into the atmosphere. When they were asked about existing aerosol programs, they stated clearly that no such programs have ever been implemented. But strangely, these proposals sounded exactly like what people around the world are claiming is already happening.
When I found out that the American Association for the Advancement of Science was going to be held down here and the main body of topics would be on geoengineering, I had to come. I had to be in on this. I had to hear what these top climate change scientists had to say.
And that's the other question about chemtrails and whether geoengineering is being deployed right now without our knowledge. I don't have any personal insight into that, other than to say that I worked in government at pretty high levels in the White House and at state government. I'm personally skeptical of that. But obviously, you never know what you don't know.
Chemtrails. On the internet, they are cited as proof of the government creating clouds to combat global warming.
They claim the American government, with the secret approval of the national government, is covertly using jet aircraft to spray population centres with aluminium, with barium, and with strontium so as to reduce people's humidity and reduce the global population.
I'm always a little bit suspicious because the government doesn't seem that capable to do something on such a large scale.
That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even talicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
And what happens here, military jets, some come out of Key West Air Force Base, and they move up into the atmosphere, and they drop mylar strips. Some could be a little wider, some are small glass fibers that are coated in aluminum. And what the Air Force does is they take their military jets and they dump these out of the aircraft, they fall into the atmosphere, and some take as much to a day to fall down.
This is inevitably military or something going on. The government, the Air Force, you see this kind of a pattern like this, you can rest assured there's something going on. They're actually little bitty magnetic and little bitty strips of, whether it's aluminum.
Well, it's a nuisance to you and I to determine what's real and what's not, but it looks like it is a life-saving operation there from the military.
The apparent motive behind this conspiracy theory is one world government.
Order, I cannot hear.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the House that both my ministry and my colleague, the Minister of Health, who have received correspondence on this issue, that this conspiracy theory does not have an iota of truth, and that the trails observed from aircraft simply come from jet engines.
Number 9 of order.
And I think what an appalling example it is of the new Foreign Affairs spokesperson for the Labour Party that she's spreading conspiracy theories about the United States government.
I think the House has heard sufficient.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
We take geoengineering to mean deliberate, large-scale intervention in the Earth system.
There are a variety of schemes that have been discussed for geoengineering. A classic example is injecting reflecting particles into Earth orbit.
Nevertheless, there might be some good reasons to think about alumina. It turns out, first of all, there's been a lot of work on the environmental consequences of alumina in the stratosphere. The big deal really is that alumina has 4 times the volumetric rate of forcing for small particles as does sulfur. And that means you have 4 times less surface area for the same rate of forcing. And this is a much bigger deal. You have roughly 16 times less the coagulation rate, and that's the thing that really drives removal. So you could get away, we think, with much smaller mass fluxes.
So that's why we see things like in the used aircraft patent from '89, they talk about aluminum. And that's why we're seeing in the surface water samples aluminum. And here's David Keith saying that aluminum has 4 times the reflective volume surface area. So they'd like us to think that we're talking about sulfur, but here they slipped up and let it out that aluminum is 4 times better to achieving their ends, and it sounds like it's going to be one they don't want us to know the effects of.
The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done. They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we could do it. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and novel. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look, and that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and that the side effects are harder to manage, and that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the management. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question, how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, then that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids.
Numerous air quality studies, including from CARB, California Air Quality Resource Board, have named submicron-sized particulates as being particularly harmful for human respiration. Through all the discussions today, I have not heard any mention of this fallout, and has this been studied, and also the effects of a highly reactive metal like aluminum on toxifying soils and waters?
The question is, what would be the effects of these materials on human health if they came down into the stratosphere, in particular small particles and aluminum?
So the collaborators of mine working on the aerosol scheme are actually folks from Carnegie Mellon who focused on human health impacts. And while we haven't published it, that was the very first thing we did, was do the order of magnitude calculation in level pencil and paper, but with an expert on human health impacts about whether there could be an issue. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously. But if you're just thinking about the sheer number of particles and the human health impact of small particles, the answer is, well, we haven't published it. That was the first thing we looked at with some of the leading experts who do epidemiological research on human health impacts, and it's not even close to being an issue.
So 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere would have no human health impact.
So let me be more careful here. We're to separate out the toxicological. So the alumina, we've only begun to research and published nothing. Alumina, we've only begun to research and published nothing.
Dane looked at him and he said, so you're telling me that spraying 10 to 20 megatons of aluminum, as you said, would have no human health effects? He took a deep breath and he swallowed and he said, let me be more careful here.
We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at it.
And that, for me, that was the whole main point of what is going to be coming out to the public. It's the damaging effects of aluminum that are being found around the world in massive amounts. Here's David Keith confronted on this very issue, and he looked, you know, at that point like they just let the cat out of the bag.
We haven't done anything serious on Illumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow. We haven't looked at it.
They're proceeding because they have an agenda that's separate from trying to thwart this crisis of global warming. You know, there's obviously several other objectives, whether it's depopulation, control, weapons aspects, communications aspects, all kinds of things, you know, wild cards that we know nothing about. We don't really know, and I'm not going to attempt to speculate on exactly what the agendas are, but we can see clearly the agendas are not benefiting mankind. You know, it's benefiting the agenda of the elite.
And so I think the question is, how do you draw the line between some activity that is allowed and doesn't need global governance and activities that do require global governance?
Dr. John Holdren has agreed to serve as Assistant to the President for Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I look forward to his wise counsel in the years ahead.
My personal opinion is that we have to keep geoengineering on the table. We have to look at it very carefully because we might get desperate enough to want to use it.
So what would we do if in year 2040 or 2060 there's a severe climate crisis, say widespread famines or Greenland sliding suddenly into the ocean? That the only plausible way in which we could start the Earth cooling this century is to directly intervene in the climate system, say by putting particles in the stratosphere.
We do stuff in the stratosphere all the time, of course, and so it's not as though the stratosphere is absolutely pristine. But you don't want to have people going off and doing things that involve large radiative forcings or go on for extended periods, or for that matter, provide lots of reactive surfaces that could result in significant ozone destruction.
You know, maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make money, or maybe I'm putting a particle into the atmosphere because I'm engaging in scientific research and trying to understand cloud physics, or maybe I'm putting this particle into the atmosphere because I'm trying to make it rain locally to seed a cloud and get more snow on our ski slopes. And this obviously raises all kinds of questions. It's hugely risky. It will likely negatively impact some people, but we might find ourselves in a situation where those risks seem worth taking.
One of the things that really shocked me was in one of the breakouts they had the benefits of these programs and then the risks. Now the benefits, the one thing that was stated was the just cooling the planet. You know, some of the risks were ozone depletion, droughts in Africa and Asia.
I got to tell you, I came away from this experience after listening to these scientists for 4 days of symposiums, really concerned because it's clear now that they are justifying, rationalizing, and looking to legitimize some really, really horrible impacts, further impacts on our environment. And they're basically formulating the sales strategy and the implementation and oversight strategy and the funding strategy.
After San Diego, I was shocked by the programs that had been proposed. I decided to write about it. That night when I finished, I sent the article to an online publication with my email address attached. When I woke up the next morning, my inbox was flooded with responses from around the world. Why? Because I had just broken the story on aluminum in geoengineering models, which I had no clue at the time that very few people knew about. Now this metal, aluminum, is being found in massive quantities way above normal levels all over in rain, in soil, and in snow.
Outrageous tyranny pouring in around us. I feel like I'm trapped in an Indiana Jones movie where the sand of the water is pouring into the chamber, and I'm saying we got to get out of here. It's rising, and you know the yuppies, the trendies, the know-it-alls, you know they're too busy slicing their arms or hurting themselves or wearing diapers as adults, whatever little decadence they're into. to even worry about a total global government program that's hiding in plain view that they call testing, Department of Energy here in the U.S., set up in Europe as well, spraying, mixed in with the jet fuel in some of the cases, mounted to government aircraft, all admitted. Not condensation trails, ice crystals, no. But barium salts, aluminum dioxide, other nuclei mixed in so that it creates an artificial haze. And NASA admits we're more than 20% darker, less sunlight hitting us. You don't just think they put that in the Matrix movies, 10 years ago because they thought that up about a global plan to black out the sun. But the scourge isn't the machines, it's us. This is part of the UN says if you don't play ball with them, they'll just spray you and shut down your weather. Now, here's my frustration. I knew they were going to announce global government with this European crisis years ago. It's now happened. I know all of this. I know they're spraying us every day. I know they're spraying my family. I know we're all filled with heavy metals. I know it's hurting us. And Aaron Dykes, I asked him last Friday, I said, get together our research for Dark Skies, the documentary. We may make it someday, but we're just going to go ahead and start releasing the information and reports. This is just a small part of it right here. Government documents, hour after hour of them on video. Okay? And then I just said, look, he was literally out there 20 minutes ago before we went live. I said, get in here. We got to present what you've got. All these video clips, all this documentation, it's so frustrating. Will the yuppies even watch? Will they even care? Because you get into how they denied this stuff existed, but the people that broke down what they were doing accurately named the chemicals that were being used. But the question is, how long has it been happening? Why is it happening? What's the end game? I'll tell you the end game here at the first, then we'll go to Aaron. The end game is aluminum dioxide in all the soils where you've got to go to companies like Monsanto. They're coming out with whole seed lines that will grow in aluminum poisoned soil. But that's only part of it. It's about the seed banks, the seed arcs, all of this. It's about weather weapons, shutting down regions that don't play ball. They're already talking about a Chicago mercantile system that will bet on the weather. Well, it's going to be a rigged casino. They don't set up casinos without putting their, finger on it, without controlling it. This is about playing God. This is about world government. And this is about genocide and population reduction. Aaron, I'm going to interject points here, but we've only got about 25 minutes, and we'll come back and do part 2, part 3, part 4, because this is so important. It shows how they can keep something bigger than the Manhattan Project secret. We expose it over the years accurately, and they come out and go, yeah, okay, we've been doing it, it's secret, but it's for your own good. And we admit it's happening, but the details are secret. So you've got the floor. Go through as much as you can, the video clips, all of it. This is incredible information.
Yeah, just like you saw back in the 70s with Kissinger and the food as a weapon plans under national security, you see global warming and chemtrails under a national security proposal. And you'll see a lot of the quotes here of Kissinger talking about food as a weapon. Is the U.S. prepared to accept food rationing to help people who can't or won't control their population growth? They're talking about withholding food aid. Would food be considered an instrument of national power? You've heard the Club of Rome talking about how mankind itself is the enemy when it comes to environmental concerns like global warming and the rest of it. The real enemy is mankind. That is from the 1990s with the Club of Rome group. And then coming up at
that was the head of the CFR, too. He's also Club of Rome. That was Haas saying that.
Oh, these groups all interlock, Alex. And you see here where the Air Force wants to, quote, own the weather by 2025 and more, to use it against the enemy and to help their own forces. And it goes on to, it's not cued properly, but Secretary of Defense William Cohen admitting that weather weapons exist, that they can create hurricanes, earthquakes, and the rest of it. So this stuff is admitted, but it is hidden behind a national security pretext, Alex.
Is that the right document?
Well, you've got weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather 2025, and after that is the quote about William Cohen and how they are able to use weather weapons.
Well, take your time. I know I said we're in a hurry, but take your time as we get to these.
Global warming has been called a security threat because it's going to disrupt all these places where there could be droughts or food shortages, and you can guess who's going to be there to create the solution. Here you've got William Cohen saying others are engaging in a type of eco-terrorism where they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. It's real. That's the reason we have to intensify our efforts. He said that in 1997 when he was Secretary of Defense.
That was Army times, yeah.
And the point is, all these military researchers, all these national security people are able to manipulate the weather. They're spraying God knows what up there. We know what some of it is. A lot of it's aluminum and sulfur dioxide and the rest of it. But they've created this rationale that it's going to solve global warming. Now let's go.
That's just their cover. They always denied it until 3 years ago. Now they go, we were doing it, but it's secret. It's to save the earth. We're peaceniks. We're Peace Prize winners.
Yeah. And they admit one of the leading researchers of this whole geoengineering thing is David Keith, and he's got a paper explaining how the cloud seeding for the U.S. and for the Soviet Union goes back to the 20s. And we have clips, I know, from Ben Livingston, if we want to play some of that.
You ready to go? Yeah, this is Ben Livingston, who was the father of weather weapons. And I saw in a little blurb in an article when they declassified that in the mid-'60s they'd certified Stanford, and he'd done it as a meteorologist. This is a guy in like World War II flying into typhoons. I mean, he's a real trailblazer. It was like almost, I think it was 90 when I interviewed him. I think he's still alive. But yeah, this was like 6 years ago. And, you know, the point with Livingston was they could control, steer, create hurricanes in the 60s. So it just shows how far this stuff's come. Let's go ahead and go to that clip.
My name is Ben Livingston. I'm the first person to ever see a cloud with the intention to cause it to do military damage. I know I can say that, and I did it several times before the next person did it. We were doing quite a lot of testing work out over the test range at China Lake, California, where we dropped cloud seeding flares or silver iodide generators into clouds, or just where we wanted to see what the reaction was. And it was there when I learned for sure that you could really change a cloud by the amount of silver iodide you put in and where you put it. These are cloud seeding dispensing units on the side of C-130s. As you can see, these units held 52. These dispensers held 52 units. We were the first ones to fly into hurricanes for the purpose of modifying them, if you will. That was Project Storm Fury. I began to be extremely confident that we could do whatever about what we wanted to with a hurricane. The Project Storm Fury had been going on since 1961, and they had already done, or had done 2 experiments, one in 61 and 63. Well, by 1964, when I was there in 1964, I wrote the plan and started to have a track and a mission for every flight that was on the hurricane cloud seeding experiments. So we had documentation for everything. Operations in Project Storm Fury are very positive. His report said that we claim they should consider now.
Okay, that's just a short excerpt from an interview I did 6 years ago with Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons. We're just demonstrating this exists, the cloud seeding, how they do it, moving right along, back to Aaron Dykes, because this is all going on, and you're supposed to just worry about football all day or what Lindsay Lohan's doing. I'm sorry, because what they admit they're spraying is brain damaging the population, as neurological disorders go off the charts, as the honeybees die, you name it. Aaron Dykes, continue with your report while we show some footage of videos we were sent from around the world of the geoengineering program.
But Alex, you said this is brain damage. I guess remember, this is all for global warming. It's for our own good. And so you've got all these seemingly wacky proposals to shoot air balloons that spray stuff in the atmosphere, to have little ships that float on the ocean and spray stuff in the atmosphere, to put a hose up into the atmosphere, to have solar reflective things orbiting the Earth in outer space.
They're just setting the precedent that they control weather.
Yeah, and you've heard them talk about how they want to control the space for the 21st century fight. This is all part of that. It's cloaked under national security and this global warming excuse. And among their other crazy plans is this albedo's plan to inject particles into the atmosphere and the stratosphere to reflect the radiation. Now, that alone will cause a disruption with the radiation forcing, which will change the weather perhaps in unpredictable ways. They know that, but they're still pursuing it because it's their best cover
Chemtrail's only
story.
one part. They've got the magnetic field generators, they now admit, in China, Dubai, other places, that are just copies of HAARP that are energizing the atmosphere.
But naturally, people have seen the stuff sprayed into the sky, asked questions about it, and as they're proving correctly, want to know more. Well, it all falls under this albedos plan. I know we have all these clips here about global dimming and about how shooting sulfur into the atmosphere is going to help that process, and it goes on from there.
But isn't it more trendy just to be into acting cool? I mean, why should we even worry about this? Oh, here's some more articles. Yeah, the solar shield. Now that we've exposed this, oh, we are doing it. We're saving you. We've just been testing it.
Yeah, and they're doing it. And here you see Bill Gates. He not only wants to steer hurricanes, but he's funding the plan to shoot stuff into the atmosphere.
Yeah, none of us have property rights. None of us don't have a right to not breed this because the little control freak chicken neck eugenicist who daddy runs Planned Parenthood says we're going to breathe it.
So you see again and again academic papers about modifying clouds, creating artificial clouds. You can read them for yourself. You've got preventing global warming by increasing cloud albedo. This is just a few selections because, as you saw, there's literally hundreds of documents. But here, Paul Crutzen, he won a Nobel Prize, and he's very much at the forefront of this whole thing. He's talking about albedo enhancement through stratospheric sulfur injection. He admits they're going to shoot sulfur particles into the stratosphere and atmosphere to try to cool the planet. And that's one of the main proposals that's tied to this spraying from the planes, because you've also got this one from Jay Gorman about how the stratospheric injection of aerosols can be done with fuel additives, aviation fuel additives. The paper describes the selection and preliminary testing of chemicals that might be used as aviation fuel additives to inject these products, sulfur dioxide and micron-sized silica particles, into the stratosphere from commercial or military aircraft. They admit they're testing it, and when it's tested, they have...
Well, this whole program they call testing, well, when is it coming up where they admit they mix it with the jet fuel, the patents?
This is the one right here. Atmospheric testing could be started almost immediately. Separately, there's other patents where they kind of sketch out ways that they can mix powder and create contrails, such as this one.
Here, guys, let's hit pause on that. Incredible job, Aaron. You've really overdone it as usual. You're calling this just the tip of the iceberg. This is quite an iceberg. Yeah, here's some of the patents on the jet engine and how it disperses the sulfur dioxide, the aluminum dioxide, so you can enjoy the massive increases in neurological disorders now plaguing everyone. And this is an InfoWars article from just about a year ago, back last December. And then it lists all the patents, 1619183204585. I mean, folks, don't.
I think there's literally a couple hundred patents.
Yeah, I mean, don't. Listen, spend your time. I know TV said it was a conspiracy theory. Why don't you go to the U.S. Government Patent Office? I mean, really, learn.
But then people are going to nickel and dime that this wasn't the one they chose to go with. The point is, they have massive amounts of researchers.
The point is, they admit they're testing it. When we learned the name of the passive aerosol program, we found out it's huge. It's going on. All I know is 15, 16 years ago, trails didn't sit there all day. They admit our Earth's dimming from this. Incredible, Aaron. They bring up this made-up crap about global warming or any climate change is unusual. And it's really just their excuse when you get deeper in the documents for weather warfare against the third world. But just like Obama's the peace president waging war, it's just a total cover story.
Yeah. I mean, for example, they were going to shoot laser particles to blast away the CFCs back in the late 80s and stuff. I mean, take, for example, this out of Porton Down, where somebody wrote asking about the open-air release of zinc cadmium sulfide in the 50s and 60s, and they say, yeah, we're sorry, but the military reserves the right to open-air test really anything they please.
Yeah, that's U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 32, subsection 1528. Let's show a document cam of this. Here's over in England, and they go, yeah, we spray deadly stuff on you. Yeah, we spray deadly stuff on you. Suck it. Die. We fry little foster kids in microwave ovens. You bet. Now die, sheep. Pay that tax money. We love you. You don't love us, you're a terrorist.